Vice President Joe Biden, if you look at just numbers, is currently leading and has been leading in the polls, whether it's among registered voters, as we see here, or more recently among likely voters. In 2016, though, President Trump won Michigan, barely. He beat Hillary Clinton in a very close race. And here to discuss the state of this race, James Hohman, the Director of Fiscal Policy for the Mackinac Center for Public Policy. Thank you, James, for coming on. Last time we did a show in the state, you were on with us as well. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
As I said, the pulse of the people. This area changes a lot. I got into this with the congressman a little bit, that the president's message was anti-NAFTA and really kind of resonated last time. A couple years later, Governor Whitmer wins. And it seems like it's changing. What's the area like now? What do you think the focus is?
Well, as you'd expect, there's a lot of uncertainty going on, and I think a lot of that is economic. Michigan took a big hit during this pandemic. I mean, we lost 1 out of every 5 jobs in a single month. And we've been recovering, and we've been recovering strong. In fact, the second highest growth in the nation in job growth. And how much people are feeling that economic growth will dictate how they vote in this election.
And it obviously depends who you ask. I want to go back to the voters for one more moment on that exact point, how they feel about the economy in their state and their own personal situations. Here it is. Let's listen, then we'll react. Here it is. How's the economy?
I think it's hurting. Well, in Grand Rapids alone, you know, we're a big medical community, so we're dealing a lot with a lot of COVID and dealing with those patients, and a lot of businesses have been closed and shut down.
All right.
So it's hurting. It's getting better, but it's definitely hurting.
That last point is what you were getting at. That yes, it's hurting, but it's getting better. I guess timing is always the tricky thing when it's an election year.
Well, we've got 10 million people here, and they're all experiencing very different things. For people who've been able to work remotely through this entire pandemic, I think they're feeling fine. But there are some people who had to wait 3 months before their unemployment insurance claims would clear. And they're going to feel a much different thing from this pandemic, and that's going to inform how they vote.
It will, right? I mean, it depends also on who you ask, who they blame for that. Some, especially supporters of the president, might have that view and then say, well, you know what? It's the fault of the Congress. We needed more stimulus, or we needed whatever it is. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the incumbent always takes the blame, but it usually does. What do you think will happen?
Well, and on top of that, if you want to tell another story, you can talk about whether it's the governor of Michigan's responsibility.
Yes, I've heard that too.
But we've had varying orders throughout the state. The consistency between them has been questionable. So if voters want to blame the governor instead of the president or Congress, you can tell those partisan stories, and there's plenty of good evidence for all three.
And do you get the sense, though, that it'll be just as close? I mean, like the numbers have been. One thing that is a little bit different about this cycle, the numbers have been fairly consistent for Vice President Biden. In other words, he's been leading throughout. Goes up and down a little bit, but not as much volatility as we saw last time, where some huge story would come out. Next thing you know, it was tied, and the week before, Hillary Clinton was up 8 or 9 points. We haven't seen that. But do you get the sense it'll be as close as it was last time around?
I have no idea. There's so many strange things in this pandemic.
Finally, an honest answer, right? Finally, an honest answer. It really, because is that what it comes down to for you, is how people view the pandemic and how it was handled?
I think that's going to be a big part of it. It's a very different thing that we haven't had an election to deal with this before.
All right, well, we'll watch it tomorrow night. Key to debate, you'll be watching as well. I said this area is very important, I'm sure. We'll see how they do on the stage. Good to see you again, James. Thanks for coming on.